Hello and welcome to a session for NCEA. I'm excited to share this with you. My name is Sean Smith. I'm a faculty member at the University of Kansas in the Department of Special Education, but don't get that to be like, wait, we're just talking special education. We're not. I'll focus in on all learners here in just a second. My area of focus, though, today is really on digital solutions, digital tools, a lot of technology that we've become, I guess, somewhat commonplace throughout this academic year due to the pandemic. What I want to do today is I want to focus in on some of these tools, but align it to a framework that I find very helpful to integrate these tools in a very meaningful way. And honestly, yes, where many of us are thinking, okay, we're coming to the academic year, or can't wait to the summer, take a break. These digital tools have become part of my toolbox. And I'd argue, of course, that some of these tools should remain part of our toolbox as we go into hopefully a post-COVID 2021, 2022. But let me introduce myself before we get further. And you're like, well, Sean, you already mentioned the University of Kansas. And that's right. But you may be saying, Sean, what are your Catholic credentials? And that's a good question here at NCEA. So with that, I want to introduce myself. I've been fortunate enough to work with the Kansas City, Kansas Archdiocese for almost 2 decades. I've been fortunate also enough to work with FIRE, which is a inclusion-related entity in the Kansas City, Missouri area, just across the border from Kansas City, Kansas. The Missouri River is at separation. Many of you have heard of FIRE, and I've been fortunate to work with them. I've also been fortunate for the last 5-6 years to serve as an adjunct faculty member at the University of Notre Dame in their PI program. And you may have heard of PI. It's a great program that supports educators across the country through an 18 credit hour experience that provides endorsement to work as a special educator, but also meet the needs of those with disabilities in our Catholic schools. And finally, I'm one of 7. Many of us, all of us actually attended Catholic colleges. I was fortunate enough to attend Providence College, which is a Dominican institution. And I could go on and on and on about my Catholic credentials, but hopefully that's enough. All right, so what are we going to focus in on today? Well, to me, I want to focus in on all those digital technologies and tools that we've been using for over a year now. You know, we think back to, nightmare-wise, over a year, and when all of a sudden we were forced to go remote, and all of a sudden people were sending out all these different tools and these lists of tools. And this is actually hyperlinked. If you want to go to it later on, this is hyperlinked. And with it, it's a list of 350 plus tools for amazing online learning. Yeah, but Sean, how do I begin to organize and utilize some of those? And I know this is probably bringing back memories. And of course, we've continued this. And yes, we've evolved. And yes, many of us have our own toolbox, as I mentioned a moment ago. But I want to take us there because today what I want to focus in on is, yes, we've been adapting with many learning management systems. Maybe Google Classroom's become your friend, or Seesaw, or Blackboard, or Canvas, or a number of other things. You've utilized the calendar function, the schedule, the resources, the presentations, automatic dashboard systems for data management, and the list of things goes on that hopefully have improved what you've been able to do to meet the needs of all your learners. But what I want to do today is I want to kind of make a connection. And this connection is between the teaching we're trying to do and the learning we're trying to facilitate with our learners, with that digital technology in between. And the way I'm going to do this, folks, is I'm going to try to connect on this idea of variability. And what are you talking about, Sean? Well, I think if the COVID has done anything for us, it's reinforced that we have a lot of variability in our learners. And you're like, what are 2 men looking at each other having to do with variability? Well, maybe this visual will help. And this visual here really reinforces the fact that when we look at our students and when we look at the center, right, the variability, we realize that each individual has a number of different things going on for them, right? They have their strengths, their abilities. We have individuals that come in with a background knowledge or experience or cultural components or language components. We have individuals that are ready to read, others that are struggling to read, individuals that need supports, and the list of things goes on. Well, with that variability, we also have realized with the pandemic that there are a number of barriers. Well, Sean, what are you talking about? Well, the barriers that, of course, social distancing has provided, right, with our masks and keeping the distance, and some of us have had to teach where we're face-to-face, but not all the students are in the classroom at the same time because of space. We've had to kind of separate, divide, and conquer. Or maybe we've had to take some of the things that we do face-to-face and put them online to do as a reinforcer at home or over the weekend. But these are barriers because of everything from the social distancing to what we've had to restrict to, oh gosh, the resources we've had to use. And with that in mind, what I want to do is I want to think about that variability and think about the fact that, yeah, that's right, Sean. I have students now that I didn't know about the attention issues, but oh my goodness, or the distractibility, or that working memory issue that maybe wasn't as obvious prior to the pandemic, but now it's very much a reality, or inattention, organization, lack of structure. The list of things goes on. So there's a variability there, and I'm not talking disability. I'm just talking our typical learners. But now we throw in the variability of individuals with disabilities as well. And of course, there's barriers to plan for, and of course, there's technology tools to consider. So with all this said, all right, and hopefully you're drinking the Kool-Aid on the fact that if we really think hard, this year has really reinforced there are differences in our learners. There's technology tools that can help us. Sean, make the connection further. All right, so with that, I will try to make the connection. And in so doing, first of all, I want to reinforce the fact that there are a number of barriers. And these barriers, if you take a look at them, can come across in academic challenges, the executive function areas, and learning behaviors. And when we look into each of those areas, we know that there's going to be a lot of variety, right? Some of our individuals may be just great with comprehension, but then we get into some content-specific vocabulary and they really struggle. Or maybe it's individuals that just know what they want to talk about, but it's the mechanics of writing that really gets in the way. Or maybe it's those individuals that, my goodness, they are all over the place in their structure of their writing experience. It could be those executive functions I mentioned earlier, where those step-by-step instructions that maybe in the past we would repeat, we'd put up several different places and reinforce, and now we're kind of limited in that reinforcement and they're getting lost and we're spending a lot of time coming back to that. It could be the fact that that organization, everything from the time management, oh my goodness, to using some of that self-monitoring, self-regulation skills we thought they had, but maybe they don't. And of course, finally, that level of engagement. So many of us have asked ourselves about how do we foster further engagement for our learners, particularly in these restrictive experiences. So with all that said, and then throw in the fact that, yes, some of our learners have been hybrid. Some all of us, if not part of the time, have been remote, definitely in the last year, when we all shut down there in March, April, and May of 2020. But those factors have further complicated this. And so to me, the digital technologies, the digital instruction has been key. It's been critical. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. But what I want to do is say, yeah, that list of digital technology tools is not enough. It's great. I mean, there's great apps for video. There's great apps for creating assessments. There's great apps for supporting social emotional development. I've enjoyed all those, Sean. But I've had difficulty kind of redesigning and replanning to meet the needs of all that variability I'm realizing. Instead, I may offer an accommodation here, make a connection over here, offer an option over there. Instead, I would argue we need to consider frameworks like Universal Design for Learning. Now, many of us are familiar with UDL. If we're not, this is not the session that we're going to go explicitly, intensely into it, but I do want to reinforce some elements of UDL. First of all, there are 3 principles, and those 3 principles primarily are multiple means, so multiple options of representation, the what of learning, the how of learning in the action, expression, or demonstration, and then, of course, the why of learning. And some people will say, well, the why starts first, Sean, and then the what and how. Now, there are many different ways to think about UDL. I love this visual to illustrate it. And what am I talking about? Well, first of all, we see the fence. The fence is there to protect the children and the fans and also protect the players, right? It's necessary. But of course, from an equality perspective, that's not too helpful. So we throw in their equity, which is critical. And of course, those boxes really help. But those boxes, to me, someone had to create them. In an educational setting, that's us, the educator. We're spending a lot of time creating those boxes, those accommodations. So instead, from a UDL perspective, I'm simply going to add in the fact that that fence, which is necessary, it's a barrier, but now I'm going to make it transparent so it's no longer a barrier. And the variability of the learners, they remain, but now I don't need to provide the accessibility components or the accommodations because, well, hey, it's no longer a barrier. So Universal Design for Learning has a number of different features. Let me kind of reinforce a couple things here. So if we go across the row here, right, across here, we'll see the fact that, in a way, from everything from engagement, representation, and action expression, from a UDL perspective, we are actually doing a lot of pedaling as the educator, and the students are riding along for the ride. So for example, in engagement, we're doing a lot of the recruiting interest. Or in terms of representation, we're providing a lot of the access issues. But where we want to go with UDL is the fact that we want to basically support the student with some guidance, with some training wheels, so that they can persist, sustain that effort. They can develop further language vocabulary through some of our strategies. Or with the options we provide, they can express and communicate what they know in a variety of different ways. And finally, we want them to be on their own 10-speed. We want them to self-regulate, self-monitor. We want them to be able to utilize their own strategies. And the list of things goes on. So this link, by the way, folks, takes you to the UDL guidelines. So if you want to take a look at more thorough understanding, they take you down, they break you down. Each of these is hyperlinked. It connects into different components. And I mention this because the fact that UDL offers to me that planning, the guideline, to be able to then utilize those digital technologies. So many of those tools that we have available to ourselves. So let's think of this, first of all, in representation. Now, I'm going to let you look at this at your leisure, but what I want to do is I want to reinforce the fact that if we're breaking down representation, there's two things going on. First of all, there's the content, what we're teaching, right? We know that, the resources, materials, all those types of things. But there's also what we do as a teacher, our presentations, our instructions, our directions, a host of things. So what are we going to look at? Well, there's that visual back to UDL. You can get there at your leisure to be reminded of different ways to break it down. And comprehension is a key component. And so I'll leave that there for you to chew on in terms of the types of students that you have that potentially are challenged with levels of comprehension. And with that, though, let's think of some tools. Now I'm going to quickly go through some of these, and I'm going to spend some time on some others. So quickly, I know many of us have already done this, and that is created step-by-step instructions. Critical, right? Critical in our instruction, vital in our instruction, and of course we've done it lots of different ways. We've done it with docs, we've done it with the LMS system, we've done it with the calendar, a host of other things. And in doing so, we've recorded the directions, we've provided images for how-to, we've provided images to go along with step-by-step, we provide directions, and of course not only have our students utilize these, most likely they're sitting in our learning management system, not the student but the directions, but the parents at home, the caregiver, the adult at home has reviewed these as well. Many of us are doing what I'm doing right now, and that is I'm talking to you, and also I'm narrating, I'm giving you examples, I'm reinforcing things. Many of us have used elements like this as well to be able to facilitate that understanding of the direction. So we put it up there, we video model it, we give an explanation, we give an illustration, and that's there for not only the student to look at, but also the adult, be it the adult down the hall that's helping us out, co-teacher, to be able to make sure they're on the same page with us, or maybe it's that adult at home that's facilitating that support for the child. Now, there's a number of different ways of using video, and I'm going to come back to that. But one of the things I want to reinforce in this instance is the fact that, and I've hyperlinked it here as a reinforcement, Common Sense Education will take you to a number of different resources when you think about video solutions and how to use them. So, for example, if I'm going to use it for editing purposes, what types of tools can I use? Well, I guess I need to get rid of that cookie setting here. But there's the best interactive video apps and websites. So they're telling you about lots of different ways of using video, but also in using video, but how to edit video, organize video, collect video. There's a host of things to consider. Many of us have actually probably found our sweet spot with video, but I'd urge us to consider that video component for your purposes. So for example, my selection, I'm always thinking editing because I want to make changes. I want to make different elements to be placed into the video. So I want an ability to edit. Now, when we have control, let's say, of editing, we can chunk our information. We can embed it like with Edpuzzle or Khan Academy YouTube in terms of utilizing video that has embedded a number of other components. We can also use resource banks. And in those resource banks, we can curate, we can organize, we can place information. And I have several examples there where we place information in a variety of different tools for access to that video. Well, enough of the video for the moment. Let's get into supported reading and comprehension. So we've talked a little bit about directions, step by step, make sure we understand where we're at. But let's get into some digital tools that really facilitate reading. Now, many of us, of course, are realizing that, wow, we have some learners that are phenomenal readers, but we have some others that their fluency struggles, their comprehension, their connection to main idea, and maybe some of our younger ones that the phonemic awareness and being able to decode and be able to listen and read out loud or hear the reading out loud. And maybe we've been limited or muffled because of our mass or our time with the students. Well, there's a number of different digital tools that will do text-to-speech. Now, many of you are probably very familiar with the text-to-speech tools. And by the way, I've listed several here in terms of read-write and others like that. But in terms of read-write and others, this is just one of several families. The read-write example sits in your Chrome browser, by the way. But the read-write offers a tool that, yes, it will highlight any text that you're reading with just a click. It will highlight it as the word is read or as the sentence is read. And of course, it will read it out loud for you. So it will just simply talk, boom, 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 along the way. And again, many of us are using this for simply access. But what I want to do is I want to reinforce that this tool has so much more potential. So for example, this tool offers all these different features that I have highlighted here. And this is something sitting in our Chrome app. So I can be on an iPad, I can be on my Mac, and basically open up my browser and be my Google Chromebook, whatever I'm using, my device, open up my browser, and then of course this becomes available. Now I want to reinforce a couple things here. I'm going to make this pop over here real quick, and we'll go to the YouTube, make it a little bit bigger so we can see it all. And this is an element in terms of text help.
This
and
video shows how to use the highlighters.
It's going to show you how to use the highlighters, but so it's the same component, but it's going to be much more powerful in respect to just highlighting text and having it read. Well, here, let them explain it to you. Here we go.
The highlighters on the Read and Write toolbar can be used on the web to identify key information as you're reading. To use, just select some text and click a highlighter button. Your highlights can be extracted into a new Google Doc using the Collect Highlights button. Just choose which colors you want to include and how to sort them, and click OK. This will automatically generate a new doc in your Google Drive containing your highlights, as well as a link back to the original source.
Now don't get lost here. And one of the things that folks get lost on is the fact that, wait a minute, so it takes it over to Google Doc. Does it need to be a Google Doc originally? No. It just needs to be a website that you're getting some text from. You're highlighting that text, and automatically it brings it over to a Google Doc. Now it links back to the website, wherever you grab the information from, so the student has that. And the beauty of it is it organizes it via color. So think of this color here. Yellow could have been the fact that I want students to grab the main idea. Purple might be areas that they're confused about. Green and blue have their own purposes. So not only am I having them grab information, but I'm also strategically trying to understand if they understand how to grab information that would be relevant for comprehension. So this is a tool, again, available in the Read-Write Chrome app, but it also is a type of a tool that's available in a number of different families sitting out there on the web. So let's go ahead and go to another component. I'll make this a little bit larger as well. And my fear is actually making it larger might take up too much space. So we'll just do this one here. Here we go. So it's going to grab images.
Click the vocab button.
Well, here, let me go ahead back a little bit.
This will automatically create a new doc in your Google Drive containing a vocabulary chart. It includes dictionary definitions, images from the picture dictionary, and an extra column for notes. This doc can now be easily customized for your individual use or even shared with students.
I'm having trouble with my mouse here. Every time I try to share, this thing wants to pop up. What I want to share with you here, though, is the fact that what this is doing is any text, again, that I'm grabbing digitally, I can use my highlighters to just simply highlight the word. And by highlighting the word, like for example, climate here, it will grab climate, it will automatically provide a definition, it will automatically provide an image, and then use in Google a note area. So let me go ahead here so you can see that a little bit clearer. We'll back up here. So there you go. We don't have that background behind us. And so this will automatically be created from any digital doc I'm working on, any text I'm reading, book I'm reading. And the process What I now have is automatic definition, automatic image. Can I delete that image and change my own? I certainly can. This is a Google Doc. Could I modify the meaning, the definition with words that the student might better understand? Yes, it's a Google Doc. But what Read-Write has done, and many of these tools do, is it automatically, with the highlighting feature up here, grabs to a word and then starts to give them another resource. So these text-to-speech resources I'm talking about, in terms of Snap and Read is another. There are a number of these tools, but they offer so much more than simply highlighting the word and reading the word out loud. So for example, Snap and Read is quite popular, and some of us may already be using it. For text that's very difficult, it's like an image instead of actual text out there digitally. And so it will convert that image into text for us to be able to read. And then the other things it will allow us to do is level some of the text. It will change the wording. It will do some translation to different languages. And it also has that study tool to chunk information, similar to what I just shared with the Read-Write. Now, many of us are also thinking, Sean, we didn't have access to enough digital text. Well, Sean, Bookshare, folks, Bookshare is a great tool if you have any students with a disability. Now, that may be an IEP or however you label that student in your school. If they have a reading challenge on their with their disability, they have free access to Bookshare. Bookshare has nearly or just over 1 million different digital texts. Everything from essays to Huck Finn to the works of William Shakespeare to Flat Stanley to textbooks. And in that, it automatically digitizes it. And it actually has its own text-to-speech reader with it. So FYI, Bookshare is great, but you do have to have a reading challenge. Now, there are also a host of digital books. And those digital books range in all sorts of different resources. So these digital books can go everything from Storybook Creator, and I've given you another link here to Common Sense Education. So for example, Kids in Storybook Maker, Tell Us All About It. All these are digital book makers. And some are for charge, some are for free, and they'll give you the pricing here. Okay, some you can try for free, so they're kind of freemiums, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all available to you to create your own digital book. Now, why would you want to create your own digital book, Sean? Well, here, I'll give an illustration with Flat Stanley. You know, Flat Stanley is a book that many of us have to read, 2nd or 3rd grade. And if you think of Flat Stanley, it goes across the year, right? I read the book, and then I create my own Flat Nolan, and then I send my Flat Nolan out. I get information back. I do a presentation on it, and next you know, it's April. Well, for some of our learners, then reading the Flat Stanley, which is a struggle, is really critical because, of course, it's across the entire year. So why wouldn't I want to create a Flat Stanley in a digital book? But I can level it. I can provide my own text. I can provide my own images. I can personalize the voice. I can embed video. I can do a host of other things sitting inside one of these digital book creators. Now, I'm not going to create it for one child. I'd make it available for a number of different individuals, some of my struggling readers. Maybe I have a few non-readers in 2nd grade. Or I'm also going to do it for individuals that need that reinforcement, maybe some of my English language learners, et cetera, et cetera. So creating a digital book with one of these wonderful tools that's hyperlinked here is a great way to be able to support those struggling readers for multiple means of representation. Now, another tool out there is Tar Heel Reader. Now, Tar Heel Reader is a tool that actually gives you access to thousands of books. So this is a tool that basically allows you to search under all sorts of different areas. You can actually even do a rating component. You can go across different languages, which is pretty awesome. And then, of course, you can go across a variety of different topics. There's a search function here too, so you can type in your own search here, okay, in so doing. But I'm going to go and select one. Oh, space junk looks interesting. I'm going to select that one that was created. Now, this is the simplicity of Tar Heel Reader. And that is I simply click Next, and it takes me to, is this book going to use the same image? Oh, good. It's using different images. And that is they put in the image. Here's the text, which of course can be read out loud in something like Read-Write or other text-to-speech applications. And the beauty of it is it's an image with simple text to tell a story. Now you may be saying, well, Sean, this is too basic. And yet, my goodness, I could tell you stories about my own son, Nolan, who has Down syndrome, and how he used this in secondary and high school to learn about a number of different historical components, because people have created some very simple but very important books when it comes to content that goes all the way up to high school. But the other thing is, this is a great book product to be able to do with early reading instruction and everything in between. So this is one of several out there, and again, Tar Heel Reader is the name. So there's so many different components to consider for these digital books. Another one is called Pictello, and I could go on and on and on, and that's why I gave that link earlier to the Common Sense Media that offers a whole list. But one of the reasons I've shared this with you is this is an app. And what I love about this app is the fact that I can actually create my own book as a student. Now, I'm going to reinforce this here in just a moment, but let me just mention and remember this, because see, I can actually start typing in SC right here, and automatically it'll start providing me a list of words. It's offering me word prediction that would go into, well, this is the title of my story. And then what happens after this, and by the way, this is a very small screenshot, so this would take up my entire screen. I go click up here next for my story title, and it takes me to, what do you want on your first page? What do you want on your second page? So it guides me along in the writing process. I'll come back to that in just a moment. But Pictello allows me to create my own stories as well. So I've offered you several resources. I've clicked on a few resources for future reference, and then here's some additional ones that would reinforce accessibility, decoding and fluency, but also comprehension. So those are things for later on to think of with multiple means of representation when it comes to that reading component. All right, I am running out of time, so I'm going to move on to action expression. Now, action expression, the how, is a demonstration. And when we think of this, right, there's a number of different things that come into mind. And here's that hyperlink again to UDL to talk about action expression. And it's so much more than just simply providing options. So when I don't know where to begin, when I'm unorganized, when I have structure problems in terms of information, when I have the mechanics, when I have a number of other things, I need structure, I need consistency, whatever we want to use. One tool to consider, and I just mentioned a moment ago, was digital books. But this time the student uses it. What are you talking about, Sean? Well, this one I'm emphasizing here is Book Creator. And Book Creator is one of several that I mentioned. Now, this one does have a plan in terms of cost, but you can create your own books. And think of it, back to that Pictello example. What I can do is I can put in the digital text, I can put in the audio, the video, etc. And now, next thing you know, the student is able to share what they know, but not have to write it out, not have to share it out in a presentation. And they've organized it in a book format, so that's a sequence and a structure along the way. So for some learners, a digital book is a great way to guide them in sharing what they know. Other tools that help guide students and structure students, and also for us to be able to structure information, but we're talking right now about action expression, are comic books or infographics, and Canva is a great tool. So is Puppet Pals and Storyboard That. These are great tools that allow the student structure, right? It gives it a template, it gives it organization, it gives it a series of boxes, it gives images to be able to add, it allows them to put in text, and a host of other things. And I've given you some links down here for you to take a look at your leisure. In addition, it's a great tool are Google Slides. Now, I love Google Slides for a variety of different reasons. And here I'm going to emphasize the fact that the Google Slide, for our purposes, for the demonstration, is we can scaffold it and we can structure it. Think of it this way. I can actually give you a Google Slide, put it into Google Classroom, you open it up for your assignment, and there are a bunch of directions I've typed in, I've audioed in, or I have video in. And so now, without me being there, you have some direction about what my expectations are. Wouldn't that be a nice little tool? And then, of course, when I'm done, I simply delete the slide that you provided me for instruction, and I keep what I created. So that's a great way to be able to demonstrate, all right? But there's so much more for demonstration. And I am running out of time, so I'm going to have to go quickly here. But there's a number of different audio apps. And by the way, you guys, you folks that have mastered those video apps, many of those video apps, you just simply go into the editing function, you turn off the video, and it turns into an audio app. You just save the audio, download an MP4, download an MPA, and you've got your audio. But there's also great interactive whiteboards. And interactive whiteboards are awesome to be able to share what I know. Think of it, they offer text, audio, you can videotape it. There's drawing tools, there's shapes, there's designs, there's a library of tools to be able to access. Explain Everything is one of my favorite, but so is Jamboard and others. These are great interactive whiteboards for us to be able to share what we know in a variety of different ways. And think of it, for example, with this math problem. I can draw out what I'm doing, and I can actually videotape this while I'm doing it and narrate what I'm doing so you can get inside my head to understand what I'm trying to say, to make connections between what I'm trying to guide, and a list of things goes on. Now, some of you are already using these for your instructional purposes. Great, and I'd urge us to consider it with our students as well. Now, of course, we talked about text to speech. Let's mention speech to text. Now, the pandemic, one of the silver linings is there's a number of tools out there. Of course, Google is one of our favorites. It's been sitting there under our tool with voice typing for years. But with that, there's a number of others that are offering us now that speech to text, and they're becoming quite good. I mean, think Alexa. Alexa has been our friend, hasn't it? In that she has actually been able to learn, and with that learning, be able to then allow for folks that may not have the articulation skills that we want, or may not be able to have the fluency skills we want. And if you're wondering in terms of a test bed, my own kitchen is a test bed with my son with Down syndrome, whose articulation and fluency is not at the level we would expect, and yet is able to share in a very, inarticulate way what he wants, and Alexa responds to it. This is becoming more and more of a reality. Now, some other tools, though, to consider, and I'll let you look at that at your leisure, is the fact that movies. Now, movies, to me, video we've talked about before, can be really, really critical. Now, when we think about video, there's a couple things I think are critical in terms of what we provide, but also what students can provide in how they share information. So, for example, when they're creating things, cue us, give us images, give us visuals, have us represent that. Now, we can guide our learner in that way, in many different ways to create, but we can do it ourselves. There's also ways to use some of our video to chunk and segment for not only the multiple means of representation, but for the students to be able to potentially do this to share again what they know. It might be components of what they've learned, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to get to some illustrations here. I'm going to, because of time, skip these elements here, okay? And instead, think about ways we can use video to assess. So, for example, we could do some virtual exit slips. Many of us are doing that now. So a student is very quickly sharing what they gathered from that lesson. And it could be they just open up their device, they're sitting in the classroom, yes, their masks are on, but they're very quickly telling us in a manner that maybe they include a lot of images in their video, so it's not so much their audio, sharing with you, okay, what they learned from that, what was the big idea, what their walkaway was. Great way to do a formative assessment for an understanding of how successful we were for that day. What do we need to review? I just mentioned a moment ago, a student from afar could be explaining how they're walking through math problems and their steps, and then you can get inside their head. And I'm not talking about for every student, but it might be some of your struggling students that they're recording and you're watching those. Of course, there's narrative, there's artifacts, there's we could have students practice their reading and video record that or audio record that and send it in so we can hear and see how they're doing with their fluency development, decoding, phonological awareness, et cetera, et cetera. My own son used video throughout his whole academic career. And in so doing, everything from conducting interviews and doing presentations about all sorts of different individuals or processes. I remember one of his science projects in 6th grade was doing a presentation on the chromosome abnormalities and genetics. Of course, he knows all about chromosomes with the fact that his chromosome differences and his Down syndrome as a result. But we could do lab experiments from afar and record elements of that. Or we, as instructors, could record lab elements or step-by-step components to facilitate that. All sorts of different things we can do with video. If you get a chance, this is a great example. I've shared it for years. Nolan created this several years ago as part of his journalism assignment. Instead of writing an article or writing different blog posts, which many of the students are doing, he created his own video series called Strolling with Nolan, where he went out and interviewed students and staff and a variety of other individuals and put that up where the budget that his school newspaper would put their print material, he put up an audio and video material. Oh my gosh. In organizing his thoughts, think of it. Not only did he have to edit his video, but he also had to organize his video. So he used a variety of different digital tools to organize his thought, web his thoughts, structure his thoughts. He then practices narration with his speech and language pathologist. So therefore, that practice of speech and that related service was engaged. But that was a great way to continue with practicing articulation, which was one of his goals. And of course, with the organizing video, he did all this, and his teacher saw this draft before the video was actually created. And that was another way to understand what he was trying to demonstrate. So many different things we can do with video. So finally, let's talk about engagement. And as a reminder, back to our bicycles, engagement is tricky because we spend a lot of time recruiting interest and oftentimes not enough in terms of supporting that self-regulation. And I know a number of us have realized, oh my goodness, the lift to be able to facilitate engagement, particularly in these times of COVID, has been challenging. But a number of the tools we've found to facilitate engagement are, to me, tools that we can use next academic year. So let's talk about a few of these. Now, first of all, some top 10 rules of engagement I think we need to talk about because I want to connect some technology to it. But everything from clear, specific goals, right? Simple, to incorporate authentic and relevant examples. That's where a lot of our digital tools can facilitate that. And I'll give you some examples here in just a moment. In addition, of course, we want to ensure the resources meet the demands of the task, support risk-taking, and also, number 7 there, increase opportunities for collaboration. And let's piggyback on that one, okay? Collaboration leads to engagement. We know it. So let's go back to our Google Slides. And remember the Google Slide example I was offering, how we could create scaffolds, we could create structure, we could support the learner. But think of it, as the learners get on Google Slides or a Google Doc or these types of synchronous types of technologies as a Padlet, they could be adding elements synchronously, being live. They could be across the room from each other and still be working as if they're side by side. They could be doing this from afar. Some are home, some are at school. They could be all remote. And by the way, they don't have to do it live, synchronously. Someone could add an element, someone come back in an hour and add another element. But that's a great way to engage the learner because they're collaborating with the peer. They're trying to respond to the peer. They're trying to connect and engage with their peer. So collaboration through tools like that, great way to facilitate engagement. In addition, interactive whiteboards, I mentioned Explain Everything, offers increasingly tools to collaborate. You share a code, and next thing you know, you're both on there. And of course, you may not hear each other because, of course, it's not Zoom or a video conference. You won't see each other, but you'll see what we're doing moving around. Now, of course, we might get on a video chat to talk. We might get on a phone call to say, hey, wait, I'm changing this. Wait, no, I want to change this. But it's a great way, again, to engage the learner through these technology tools for collaborate. Jamboard's another interactive whiteboard that's quite popular in the Google realm. So, and of course, Padlet. Padlet's a favorite of many to be able to do a number of different things. And of course, the beauty of Padlet is I can put in images, video, text. And again, it's a live synchronous experience. When I'm making changes, I see them with everyone else. So the last thing I want to share, and I've run out of time, so I just want to quickly reinforce, and of course, this is available to you as part of the NCEA presentations, but kind of a top 10 list of elements to think about when it comes to engaging. And some of these are old and true, and some of these, in terms of digital technology tools, we can think about in a variety of different ways. So for example, knowing your student. We are increasingly getting a lot of data through our learning management systems, through Google Forms or others that collect formative assessment, and I'll reinforce that with number 10. But we have a lot of information that we can continually get information about, data about, to better appreciate and understand our students. And in so doing, we can connect with them and be able to enhance that level of engagement. Creating schedules, of course, we've learned this and we've been doing this, but to continue to do it, and more importantly, to empower the individuals to take control of their own schedules, to me is critical. And there's a number of tools. Of course, our LMS allows for a lot of that, but the visual schedules we've created and we have in our walls, on the walls in the classroom, why don't we take that digitally as well? Why don't we put that up in our learning management system and share that visually with them, with the adults at home, with the adults in the building that are trying to facilitate? And I know much of this you're already doing. Small group structure, of course, many of us have become pros with making WebEx or Zoom or whatever in terms of our breakout rooms. Very, very important. Of course, reinforcement, and there's a variety of different ways to provide reinforcement. And again, I think there's ways to do this digitally in respect to what's already out there for formative assessment, which I want to reinforce. Of course, set expectations, and we've done this regularly when any of us have done hybrid or remote learning with video conferencing. This is what we expect. This is when we expect you to be on, and a list of things goes on. So I am running out of time, so I'm going to go down to, I'll let you look at this at your leisure, and go down to the last one, and that's formative assessments. And formative assessments to me are critical in the aspect of being able to, one, get at data, to be able to see where my individuals are, but also to reinforce where they are, which really allows for a level of engagement. Well, I'm sorry I'm not able to kind of slow down on that and make all the connections. I do hope that these resources were helpful. Now, I want to make sure that you understand how to access these resources and more. So there's my email address. And of course, through NCEA, you've been able to click to this Google slide, and these are hyperlinked. So you can go from there, many of these resources. You just click on the image or click on the link that I've provided you. But I haven't mentioned schoolvirtually.org, and that was created for folks to teach in online learning. And that's free, and I'll have you take a look at that at your leisure because I have run out of time. I hope this was helpful, and I hope this is connected for things that are necessary for tomorrow, next week, and next month. Have a great rest of the conference, and thanks for spending time with me. I hope this was helpful.